Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our roundtable setup here with Draft Sharks, Mike Shope, Adam Krautwurst from the Deep End Fantasy Podcast, also Matt Schauf and Jared Smola. Happy New Year. It's been more than a week. Probably it's too late for Happy New Year, but it feels a little bit like that for me being back with you guys here in the Rochester area today. We're going to go long on the FFPC Playoff Challenge. This is the week. We know the teams. We know the matchups. Everything we've got. It's time to fill out those rosters, and hopefully we can make you that much more optimal here with our thoughts and advice today. Want to thank RockVox Recording and Production of Rochester, New York, professional podcast, voiceover, and live stream studios and production services. Check them out at rockvox.com. Okay, Jared, how far along are you? 100% of the way. Saturday. How far along are you in sort of like what you think you know and want to do, and then what might today add to that?
I haven't tried putting a lineup together yet, if that tells you anything. I've just kind of been getting the lay of the land, I guess. It's the simplest game, just at face value, but then the more you dig into it, you can like go down the rabbit hole, and it can become super complicated. So I love it.
Does that make it great, or?
I mean, it makes it different. I think when you try to rank them, that's when you get in trouble. But the thing I like about this is it's thinking as opposed to matchups. If you're setting a week 17 lineup in whatever format, you're looking at matchups. You're trying to figure out what other people are going to play. This is a lot more thinking. You're thinking about who can advance. You're thinking about what happens if the team you're expecting to advance doesn't advance. You're thinking about who everybody's going to play. You're thinking about the popular guys that you're going to need versus the popular guys you might want to fade. You're thinking about which teams you don't want to put in there. So there's a lot of thinking to it. And obviously, you're quite capable of overthinking it. That can be the issue. But I like a format that forces you to think, but can also penalize you for overthinking.
Oh, Adam, overthinking. That's not your style.
Never my style. Don't got to worry about that with me. The overthinking. But yeah, no, it's definitely fun. And it's fun to like build the lineups and then go, how does this not win this lineup? And then you build like 8 of them that are just as good, and you're like, there's no way I'm going to lose, and then you don't win. So, but no, that's why we're here to kind of talk it all out. Hopefully, build the winner.
And it can all come down to micro edges too. Like we can talk about who we won in the Super Bowl. It might ultimately come down to you win because you had that one guy that had the one big game before his team got eliminated in the first round.
Well, for example, last year, Kendrick Bourne, who they learned from Fantasy Mojo, was like on the perfect roster. He was only on 10 actual rosters, not the winner. But who even remembers? I mean, it was 24 points of garbage time and a 30-point loss to the Bills in the first game or the first day of the playoffs. Yeah. Like, that was right. Because in one show last year, was anybody talking? Did anybody think of Kendrick Bourne last year? So, no, you didn't need him to win, but those are those micro edges.
I think that's the takeaway for me is that, so it's a 7,800 team contest, which is big, but it's not huge. So you want to get different, but to me, you don't want to get Kendrick Bourne different. You don't need to be that crazy to win this contest.
Did I scare you yesterday?
Yes.
Bourne owned in 0.14% of leagues last year.
I think, leave this till after if you want. I think it would be fun to sort of try to predict who are the players that are on like between 1 and 10 teams or 5 and 10 teams. Like last year, there were a couple of guys in that range, again, from Fantasy Mojo who were injured. Like Chris Godwin, who was not going to play in the playoffs, was picked like by mistake or something like that. But Gabriel Davis was on 9 rosters out of 7,500 or whatever that is. He did okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I didn't want to scare you. I just think separately it could be a fun game to try to sort of predict or bet on who those guys might be this year.
And I think Gabe Davis versus Kendrick Bourne is interesting there because I think Gabe Davis had the 4-touchdown game last year. So you can say, playing some of him makes sense. I think that's the one you don't want to get to because that means you have to sit Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen to get to him. So you have to have a monster game like that. And then if they get to the Super Bowl, even that monster game might not make him better than Josh Allen. Kendrick Bourne, though, is from a Patriots team where nobody was really that good. And we have 14 playoff teams. We have 12 roster spots. We have 2 teams we're going to fade in full. We have 2 teams we're going to put a kicker in defense. That still leaves 2 players that we know we're going to lose in round 1. So if you do want to get different, you can look at one of those teams that is spread around like that, try to find a guy that has a path to producing, and he could make your roster without being on many others.
And I think where you want to get weird is on the teams you're projecting to go one and done. Because the more games a team plays, the more likely it is that their top guys are going to be the top scorers. And in one individual game, Kendrick Bourne can be the Patriots' top scorer. If they were to play 3 games, I would bet it would not be Kendrick Bourne as their top scorer.
Yep.
Well, 7,800 teams max in the $200 version of the FFPC Playoff Challenge. If you must get weird, there's a $35 jobber over there too,
Yes.
and you can, even get a little crazier maybe. All right, so the plan is to go AFC then NFC, team by seedings 1 to 7, which means Matt, we'll start with Kansas City.
Well, let's check the AFC matchups chart first because Jared got the numbers together for the by position matchups by team. As you can see, Kansas City's been very friendly to quarterbacks. We'll see if that plays out as anything. Also been very friendly to tight ends, running backs. It's a good team to go up against. We see some other soft spots up there. We see some other difficult matchups too. Buffalo against quarterbacks and tight ends, for example. And Jared, I know you're going to be putting this up on DraftSharks.com later today.
Right, helpful to look at as you're sort of plotting paths for teams, how you expect it to play out, and which positions on those teams will have better matchups based on who wins each game. So definitely, again, you could spend hours thinking about this stuff.
That's right.
And we will. And we have already probably. Is Kansas City inflated 30th against quarterbacks, if you're listening and not watching, 25th against tight ends to a large extent because they're always ahead and scoring a lot? Or is there really sort of a weakness with the Chiefs? Because these are good teams. They're going to be playing now. Maybe they can't really or won't be exploited quite the same way.
Yeah, I think their weakness is probably
Defense.
Defense, yeah. Well, yeah, but also like the receivers aren't probably guys that you're going to want to target on the Chiefs. It's going to be like Mahomes, Kelce, Jerick McKinnon. I think we've been talking about Jerick McKinnon in the playoff challenge for like 5 years now. Like the Niners, like he's just always there when it comes to be playoff time. But yeah, it's just I think it really depends on and what this competition does is it forces you to plant your flag on not necessarily players but like teams. Like you have to kind of walk through and say, okay, who's going to win? We kind of plan our route. And it's like, okay, well, the Chiefs are in good shape because they don't have to play the Bills and the Bengals, so they have a better chance to get to that Super Bowl and get those double points. And how are they going to get there? How do you envision the Chiefs doing that? And lately, it's been screen passes to the running backs. I mean, a lot of run after catch, a lot of Jerick McKinnon. I mean, so that might be the route that they end up going. That might be the route that you want to attack is maybe have more McKinnon than even like a Travis Kelce because he's going to be so high owned.
Well, how popular do we think McKinnon's going to be? That's my big question. If he's going to be popular at all, I think he's an easy fade.
I would assume he's the third most popular on the Chiefs, and and you want to the thing is if you're only going to go with two running backs the whole way through, do you want Jerick McKinnon? Right. We'll see.
Well, if he is the third most popular Chief, that's probably going to make him less than 20% owned because the quarterbacks aren't usually the top 2 quarterbacks are like 20 to 25% owned if you look back on previous years. So if we're getting Jerick McKinnon popular at like 20 to 18%, I think that's a good range to have him in there. Obviously, Travis Kelce is the first Chief that you play, probably the guy you play the most. He's 6 points per game better than any other tight end. This is a tight end premium format, which means you get 1.5 points per game for 1.5 points per reception for tight ends. So you don't have to make a case for Kelce. Patrick Mahomes is going to be in the mix at quarterback, although he's no better than third for me among the quarterbacks and maybe even fourth, but we'll talk more about the quarterbacks later. I think the case for Jerick McKinnon is, primarily you're getting different from Travis Kelce lineups. Mm-hmm. There is the chance that Travis Kelce has some negative matchups. The Chargers have been tough on tight ends. The Bills have been tough on tight ends. He had big games against both of those teams this year, so he's capable of beating any matchups. But, in any individual game or two, he could have a down game. Jerick McKinnon has had touchdowns in all of the past 6 games to finish the season. Yeah. All 6 games, Kelce did not score a touchdown. By the way, 9 total touchdowns in that span, 3 games of 2+ touchdowns this year. That's 1 more than Travis Kelce has had this year. Chargers are a terrific running back matchup. If they beat the Jaguars, that's who the Chiefs likely play in their first game. The Bills are friendlier to running backs than tight ends if that's who the Chiefs play in the second game. And the Eagles are also friendlier to running backs than any other position if that's who the Chiefs then play in the Super Bowl in this scenario. So there's a case for Jerick McKinnon to be in there.
He won't be in my lineups. If he's going to be anywhere near 20%, I think he should be closer to 10%. He's running super hot with touchdowns, like unsustainable. Kelce, not only by far the most productive tight end, only Austin Ekeler among flex-eligible players averaged more FFPC points per game this season. So among running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, Kelce was number 2. So to me, Kelce's the clear top play if you're just building one optimal lineup. And the question is, how popular is he, and is it worth fading him?
I think there might be room for him, like not as chalky as maybe your instincts would say, because in a world, in a year where we've just constantly been listening to and ourselves harping on how much of a disaster tight end is, look at the teams in the NFC and who their tight ends are. Like they're all, well, not all, but so many interesting choices there from the top seed down. I know we're not there yet, but Goddard's and Hawkinson and Kittle. Oh my gosh, Kittle found a quarterback who loves him, and Dalton Schultz. And like you have some interesting, and the AFC has a couple, but there's some interesting options in the NFC at tight end that might make Kelce less chalky than we kind of maybe think.
He was only 53% last year. I was a little surprised that it wasn't higher than that. Tyreek Hill was around, and obviously Patrick Mahomes. But
yeah, that's what's interesting is what people are going to try to get off of that favorite Kelce, or do you just build your lineup around it? It's and a lot of it comes down to matchups. I mean, when I'm building my roster, I mean, you look at it, and we'll probably get to the Bills next, but like, what do you do with the other teams? Like, if I'm going to get a quarterback like Josh Allen, where he could put up in 2 games, probably not what Mahomes would put up in 4, but like Allen has an extra game essentially. Like they're a massive favorite against the Dolphins. I'm going to lean Allen and then go Kelce rather than like Mahomes and like Diggs or something like that. So you got to kind of play those games too.
Allen did put up almost as many points last year as Burrow put up.
Sure.
In 4 and only playing 2, by the way, not Mahomes.
Yeah, and Matt put together these numbers for us. They're in our sheet. We'll get them up on the website at some point this week. But the gap in fantasy points between Kelce and Mahomes is smaller than it is between these other elite quarterbacks and their wide receivers. So in other words, you can soak up more of the Chiefs' fantasy points by playing by playing Kelce than versus playing say Jamar Chase from the Bengals or A.J. Brown from the Eagles. So that's another argument in favor of Kelce to me.
Any receiver or Isaiah Pacheco even trying too hard?
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah.
I kind of
say
like
that for the $35 per podcast.
Tony's exciting, but okay.
Oh yeah, there you go.
You know what? That's exactly why there will be some Kadarius Toney teams, and that'll just bring down the ownership rate on everybody else.
One last point on McKinnon is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's still on the team. He might be back. He might mix in a little.
Valid point. Yeah.
Tyreek Hill was like 16% owned last year, so I have trouble believing that McKinnon will be higher than that. So I think I'm not worried about the ownership. I think the touchdown rate is obviously unsustainable, but we're not drafting for a season. We're drafting for 2, 3, 4 games. Like he could easily score twice in each of the first 2 games, and then they could be done.
By the way, back to that matchup chart reference where we started, those are Kansas City, so the 30th against quarterbacks, 25th against tight ends. You don't know yet who they're going to play.
Correct.
When we'll get to it later, but I have sort of a Baltimore theory right now that I think could be. Were those boos?
No. I'm with you. I'm with you, Mike.
Good. But it might just be wrong. All right, number 2 seed, Buffalo, home to Miami, Sunday afternoon. Adam, Allen, Diggs, we done?
Probably, yeah. We're probably done. But then I hear that Gabe Davis was owned by like 9 teams last year, and 4 touchdowns in 1 game. Yeah, it's tough. I just think that when you have a chance, Allen reminds me of a lot of Mahomes last year, where Mahomes was a guy that was going to get you that extra game. Like you figure they're going to win that first one, and then they can go all the way to the Super Bowl. I think Allen is that guy this year with that extra game against Miami. And you look at the quarterback schedule, right? Like Kansas City's 30th against quarterbacks.
Miami's 29th.
Miami's 29th. Cincinnati's 13th. So I mean, that's a beautiful run. Even if he doesn't get to the Super Bowl, and let's say he gets to Kansas City and loses, that's 3 massive shootouts. He's going to kind of be my chalk quarterback when I'm building a lot of these builds. Shocking, I know, to hear. But it's also because there's just no other outside of Diggs. I'll probably have some Diggs too, but outside of those 2 guys, I don't think anyone's really worth it. No one's playing very well. The running backfield cannibalizes each other, and then Josh Allen takes from that too. So if you wanted to take a shot on Gabe Davis, I wouldn't call you crazy because he's done it before. He even did it this year. Against the Steelers, he had a massive game, but he's just been so bad, dropping everything, not getting open. So yeah, it's really Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs for me.
Here's the argument against Gabe Davis. If he has
There's
a
a lot of
monster
them.
game, guess who else is having a monster game?
Josh
Allen.
Yeah.
Like last year, looking at the Mojo numbers, Josh Allen was in the winning lineup. Josh Allen was in the perfect lineup.
Yeah.
Gabe Davis was not in either.
I know. Yeah.
You could consider playing Gabe Davis if you're projecting the Bills to go one and done.
Sure.
Otherwise, you can't.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
I mean, if that's your path, then go for it. But if you're projecting them to lose to the Dolphins, you should you hit the
Tyreek
sports
Hill.
book instead of this tournament,
Yeah.
because you're on something. But it's not. That's not happening. Like I think that is the clearest defeat in this playoff tournament. Honestly,
What if Tua plays? What if Tua plays?
What if Tua plays? He sucked for the past month.
Not against the Bills.
He won't finish the game. I don't think he's finished the game
He
against the
wasn't even
Bills
that
in
good
2
in that
years.
game. He was like 55% completions. Anyway, I mean, it's a mismatch. So I think none of us is actually projecting that. If you want to play it that way, if you have that many teams that you're playing
Right.
that, you can try it. I have a hard time imagining that the Bills have a terrible game and Gabe Davis has a big game. So even then, I'm not playing him. For me, Josh Allen is my absolute favorite fantasy player throughout playoffs, whatever your format is. I think he's the top player because we think that the Bills have at least a chance to go into the Super Bowl. So he has 4-game potential here. The team has been the best overall team among these top 3 AFC seeds all year. So I'm taking the chance that he gets 4 games. He's easily the first Bill in. Stefon Diggs for me is the only other guy I'm considering at all. And I'm only playing Diggs if I'm mixing in a few other quarterbacks. But, the numbers that Jared was talking about, if you play Diggs, you get 65% of Josh Allen's scoring average this year, looking at Diggs' numbers versus Allen's. That's lower than what you get for Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow by 9 percentage points. It is 13 and a half points below what you get for playing Kelce instead of Mahomes. So it's just Josh Allen can have a huge game without any other Bill having a huge game.
If you want to bet against the Bills, I think this is more of a roster build question, but then you don't play Davis. Maybe you just, because they're such a favorite, you don't play anybody, or you just throw the kicker in there, right? Like if you want to play against Allen or Diggs, go all the way, go all in.
Yep.
And then, of course, you'd want to play, I would think, Tyreek
Miami.
from Miami. This is, where you got to think about how this is going to
And I
play
think that's
out.
what Matt was saying too. Like, if you're not gonna bet him winning, Gabe Davis isn't gonna have a good game if the Bills lose. So yeah.
All right, 3 seed, Cincinnati, home to Baltimore Sunday night. Burrow, Mixon was in the winning lineup last year.
Love that.
They played 4 games. Some of you familiar with Jared and Mixon and how long they go back. Chase and Higgins. How do you decide between Chase and Higgins?
I've been trying to talk myself into playing. I mean, I still think Higgins is a good contrarian play. I think he'll be half as owned as Chase. Chase is going to be much
last year.
Yeah, Chase will be much higher owned. In their 9 healthy games together, 21 points per game for Chase, 15.5 for Higgins. But I mean, in a 2-game sample, Higgins can outscore Chase pretty easily. So I think that's a spot to potentially get different, is playing Higgins over Chase.
Last year, Fantasy Mojo, Chase on 31% of rosters in the $200 game, Higgins 9%.
Wow. Yeah, if it's that again, Higgins is a better play.
I agree there. Higgins has been great.
Have the seasons they had given you any indication about whether that's more or less likely? A Higgins, year?
Chase lately, he's averaging 12 targets per game over his last 5, 30.5% target share. He's kind of, and it's just a 5-game sample, but he's kind of separated from Higgins. And Higgins was banged up for at least one of those games, if not 2. I can't keep it straight. Mm-hmm. Chase straight up's the better play, but again, factoring in ownership, I think Higgins is definitely worth considering.
If you look at the overall full season numbers on FFPC, if you're setting your lineup and you look at the chart, the scoring average has Chase 5 points per game ahead of T. Higgins, but that includes 2 games he barely played and another game he left early. If you take those out, the gap is 2 points per game. So Chase is the better play straight up, but obviously the difference is the ownership. And if we look at last year's playoffs, Chase outscored T. Higgins in basic PPR points by nearly 11 total, but Chase had his worst of his 4 games in the Super Bowl, just fantasy points wise. T. Higgins had his best in the Super Bowl. So ultimately Higgins was the better play between them because we get double points for the Super Bowl, and that's just the luck between them. That's right. That's the case. Is if you're saying which guy is the better play straight up, it's Jamar Chase. There's a lot of luck involved here just for who gets the touchdown win and the ownership level that we talked about already.
In the Super Bowl, it was a bomb to Higgins against Ramsey, and
Face
before
mask.
that, right, and before that, it was a pass from Joe Mixon, if I remember correctly, where he
Yeah,
scored on.
yes, at the end, yeah,
in the game. So yeah, pretty random kind of moments there. He's good though.
Yeah, no. The only thing that worries me about Higgins is he's left in the first play like numerous times.
I know.
He could get hurt. He's been hurt a lot. Even last week, he got banged up and then looked like he wasn't all there. And they threw a bomb to him right in his hands, and he looked like he was out of it.
Just imagine the Super Bowl, and we're all like, where's T. Higgins? Why is Trenton Irwin on the field?
They're saving him.
Irwin.
The 4-seed Jaguars are now a 1-point underdog at home against LA. That has moved. That started in the 2.5-3 range where the Chargers were the favorite. This game is Saturday night in Jacksonville. So the Chargers had the Sunday game in Denver, which was, I think, stressful. They also had a couple of injuries in this game, and they lost it. Now they have a short week and are flying west to east. Jacksonville, the longer week at home. Maybe that matters here. Maybe it doesn't. Matt, in terms of the Jags here, what do you like or not like?
I mean, I expect the Chargers to win this game, but it's definitely not clear. This is one of those where I'm going to treat it like either team can win.
Yep.
On the Jags side, it's tough for me to like anything besides Travis Etienne, and he doesn't even get enough receiving-wise to be a flex consideration. So he's maybe one of the two running backs. If I'm setting multiple lineups, I'm probably getting an Etienne in there. I also think that this is just a team that's worth considering full fading, whether that's playing nobody or playing a kicker or defense. Chargers have been playing better lately. Week 18 was frustrating, but I think they've been better than that just before that. And the Chargers defense in particular has been second best by Football Outsiders DVOA over the past 5 weeks if you take out week 18 because so many teams were not really playing that week. It's been a negative matchup for tight ends all year, negative for wide receivers. Running back is really the best matchup spot for it.
This is definitely a game where I want two position players from, I think. Because I could see it going either way. I'm with Matt there. I would lean Chargers. But I just think it's going to be a high-scoring game. It has a 47.5-point over-under. That's the second highest on Wild Card weekend. I'm on Etienne as my guy. I think that's where you want to attack the Chargers. And then if the Jags win, they get the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 20th in adjusted points allowed to running backs.
If you'd asked me like a week and a half ago, I'd probably be in the exact same spot. But the Jaguars sucked against the Titans in week 18. They sucked when they played at Detroit. So I just wonder if they're not that good and now they're running up against a defense that's been running hot. So I think generally I agree with Etienne, but I'm more comfortable with fading the Jaguars than I would have been not that long ago.
We're also talking about the Chargers, though, who have done nothing but let me down for the past 3 years.
This is just a game that has a chance to let us down, where the final's like 20-16.
They did play in week 3, and Jacksonville won 38-10.
There you go.
But you can't start James Robinson here, Adam. He's on the Jets now.
No.
He was the star that day.
Who's the most owned player for the Jaguars in this game?
Etienne.
Etienne.
So this might be one of those games where you're like, hey, a shootout. One of these teams is got to lose. Do I get crazy and pick a Christian Kirk or something like that that's low owned from this game? Blow up spot. Well, not really a blow up spot because they're better against receivers. The Chargers are, but do we get it? Because I love Etienne in this matchup. The fact that they're 24th. The Chargers are against running backs. You get in there, you get Etienne as a blow up game, and then maybe they win and they move on, and you get another one against the Chiefs, who are 20th against running back. So I love the Etienne idea because there's not a lot of great running backs to have anyways. But I also like the idea of getting a player like throwing a dart at one of the receivers or even Evan Ingram and getting a decent game from them, low owned, and maybe they win and get through.
I like Kirk here better than Ingram because I think Ingram's going to pull more ownership because of the tight end premium, because of the big games he had late in the season. And this is a negative matchup for him. And this is a team that doesn't feel like it has to go to anybody. So this is kind of more of a Kendrick Bourne situation where it's not as bad. Like, we knew that New England was going to lose to the Bills last year. We don't know that the Jaguars are going to lose to the Chargers here. But they spread it around. Any of these guys could have the game, and Kirk is at least as well set up as Ingram or Zay Jones.
Yep. My second Jaguar would be Zay Jones, actually. I think the number of tight ends I think that are interesting will push Ingram down here. Yeah. He might be the right play. Jones 10 for 85 and a touchdown in the first meeting against the Chargers, if that matters, and he's had like big games. Yeah. So, he's a kind of a fun idea.
Kirk had 6 for 72 in a score in that Week 3 meeting against the Chargers. So I'm with Adam. If it's for a flex spot, I think Kirk over Etienne or Zay Jones over Etienne is interesting.
And how much of this is who do you think will win? Like, how important is it? You're talking about, Jared, covering yourself. It's only a 1-point number, and the total is high. That's right. So you might want both teams. Is this an important game for sort of getting an edge in the tournament, for picking one team and not the other, or no?
I think so, because I think this game's going to be high scoring, and I think the winner probably plays the Chiefs, which is another good spot. Right. So I'm very likely going to end up with positional guys from both sides of this game.
I'll probably land in the same spot for the same reason.
Yeah, I think as long as you don't fade one of these teams, and you got to get lucky with the guy that you pick. But as long as you don't fade him, I think you hit your guy, you'll be in good shape.
And running back, we've seen. I've read this from Fantasy Mojo too. You can afford a one and done. 2 years ago, when we did this as a group, we put Jonathan Taylor in that lineup for the game against the Bills. They'll probably lose, but maybe you get a touchdown and you put a number up. You don't want to be, I think, afraid of an outcome like that. Just a couple of your position players will lose, at least. You want it to only be 2, but at least, 2 will. So you have to sort of accept that.
Yep.
The Chargers in the game at Jacksonville as the 5 seed. Austin Ekeler, Travis Etienne, is it almost the same argument?
I like Ekeler a lot more because he does have the receiving. That fell off late in the season. He's down to 4.4 catches per game over the final 5 games, I believe it is. But before that, it was 7.1 catches per game through Week 14. I know the Chargers leaned more on the run late in the year, and they were more efficient over that span. So maybe they continue that into the playoffs. Maybe they don't, though. Maybe they lean back in the other direction. Austin Ekeler is covered either way, because if they're running more, he's obviously involved. If they're more efficient, he's got more scoring chances. If they fall behind or if they throw the ball more, Austin Ekeler is still going to be involved. So I like Ekeler a lot. It's him. Then it's Keenan Allen, who's clearly the better bet for receptions. And then Mike Williams, I think, is interesting to throw in a little bit, assuming that his back is okay heading into the game.
Yeah, I feel like eventually you got to take a stand on a stud from one of these teams. That you don't really got to worry about ownership percentage and all that. And I think Ekeler, in a game against the Jags, where they are 19th against running backs, and then a game against the Chiefs where they're 20th against running backs. I mean, Ekeler could have 2 monster games against both those teams. So I really like Ekeler here. The Chargers are I'm sorry, the Chiefs are decent against receivers. The Jags are not great against receivers, but you just don't know. I mean, is it Mike Williams? Is it Keenan Allen? So they could go any route there.
Jared, I think Ekeler, of the 5 teams we've now covered, is my favorite single play yet.
Yes, I think he'll be that way for most people, though. I think he's going to be the most popular running back, maybe one of the most popular positional players.
I don't know. I think there's another running back who will be more popular.
Who else are people going to play from the Chargers, though?
Keenan Allen.
Yeah. Keenan Allen's averaging. He quietly had a monster close to the season.
Yes.
10.8 targets, 8.8 catches per game over his last 5. So to me, he's the guy to play over Mike Williams. I'm a big Mike Williams fan, but it'd be Keenan Allen.
Everything he's ever done has been quiet.
Sure.
But it is. I mean, I think Mike Williams is T. Higgins to Keenan Allen's Jamar Chase. And I think that Mike Williams, relative in the 2 comparisons here, Mike Williams beats Keenan Allen in big play potential, so can have the kind of game, that even if with fewer receptions, he gets there. So looking at his 5 games since he returned from that ankle injury, he's had 4+ catches in each of those, and that includes the Denver game he left early in Week 18, averaging 5 catches, 77 yards over that span, versus Keenan Allen, 8.8 catches, 88.8 yards per game over that span. So it's certainly been Allen ahead of him. I guess maybe even the better comparison is Chris Godwin and Mike Evans here. Is Keenan Allen's gonna most likely catch more passes. Mike Williams has the big play potential. Either of them could go off in a single game. And, this is a team that we probably don't expect to win more than 2, maybe just play 1.
What about Justin Herbert? He's
got a great schedule.
He's my craziest idea right now. There's a few days to go, so I'll probably get crazier. But Jacksonville 27th in adjusted points allowed to quarterbacks. Kansas City 30th.
Yep.
Here are Herbert's FFPC points in his 6 career games against the Chiefs: 22.7, 27.8, 26.4, 31.7, 34, and 26.4. And I'd give the Chargers some chance to beat the Chiefs. They tend to play them tight. The
Very close
The
games.
Chiefs won. I believe the Chiefs won both games by 3 points this year. I believe
They should have lost. They should have lost both.
Yeah, they should have
Right.
lost 6 or 7 games this year. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I like it. It's interesting. We didn't talk about Burrow. The whole AFC quarterback situation is much better than the NFC. AFC, the average defense is 18, ranked 18th. In the NFC, it's 14th. So I feel like if you just go, hey, I'm going to take a quarterback out of the AFC, no matter how the matchups break, who wins, who loses, I think you're going to end up in pretty good shape. I definitely don't hate Herbert. But I just feel like Ekeler, you kind of got to keep it to chalk there because everyone's going to have Ekeler, and if he goes off and you don't have him, I think you're in trouble.
I think Herbert makes as much sense as Joe Burrow. The reason I don't think I could get to him at more than like a 1-8 level is if either Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen makes a Super Bowl, then you might have lost.
I was going to say, like, I don't think I can play Herbert and Jalen Hurts. I got to figure out if I make sure I can do that before I rule it out. Too much risk for me that Jacksonville wins the game, I think, in terms of Herbert.
To play Herbert, yeah.
Yeah, it's one reason why I like Ekeler so much is...
I want to say there was a Lamar Jackson team in the top 8 a couple years ago. Whenever we thought that they were going to be huge, he was like 70% owned. They played one game, lost to the Titans.
Right. Adam, we talked to the guy who won. He was a Baltimore guy.
That's right.
And he might have had Jackson. I don't remember if he did, but...
There was definitely a Jackson team up high. I don't remember if it won.
That's familiar.
I mean, you say he's 70% owned. That if a guy's 70% owned, you're probably going to have one of those sneak into the top 8. So I don't think that's I mean, if the Chargers lose round 1, you probably don't want Justin Herbert.
Jacksonville has allowed over 286 yards in a game passing twice since week 3. Now that's their schedule too. That's the AFC South talking a little bit, but. Like, there are some really low-number passing games against Jacksonville. It's not because they score like crazy. Yeah. Dallas got them in the game Jacksonville won against Dallas. They played the Chiefs mid-season. Mahomes got them, but really, they do not give up. Raw numbers, they do not give up a lot.
Football Outsiders has them 30th in pass defense. They're actually 11th against the run.
So they're bad at pass defense, but nobody throws on them.
Interesting.
Coaches, man, coaches.
I mean, like you said, there was a lot of Houston, there was a lot of Tennessee, there was a lot of Indy.
Jets, Jets in the rain. Yeah. That'll help your stats. 6 seed Baltimore. Want to do anything here? You want to hear my theory?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's me.
That's all I want to hear.
I'm the problem. It's me, okay? Everybody agrees.
Wow.
Everybody agrees. So I was thinking that Bills-Dolphins would go on at night. And that Baltimore game's unwatchable, potentially, if Lamar Jackson sits. I think they know he's playing. And so it's only Tuesday. I don't have a deadline yet, but I kind of want to build a lineup off the premise that Jackson's on the field. And if he is, would you take 6 points? They were not going well before he got hurt. Like, it wasn't like it was humming early in the season, right. Yes. But, weapons-wise, Jackson's almost the only thing you can do with the Ravens. And that
Andrews.
You want to see the return of Mark Andrews.
Well, Andrews averaged 16.9 FFPC points per game with Lamar Jackson through week 12. That was second among tight ends behind only Travis Kelce.
Is that going to be good enough, that number?
Enough. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think if you're playing Andrews, you're banking on them winning. I mean, they don't need to win, but I think you're hoping they win.
Even overall this season, Mark Andrews is second among tight ends available in this tournament in points per game on FFPC. And he had the game last time out. He had the game, I don't know, a couple games before. Like, Mark Andrews is capable of being the guy who has the one big game. I also think he's going to be highly owned because he's the only attractive Raven, and it's tight end premium. So I think there's going to be a lot of Andrews teams. For me, this team is a full fade. I don't care who the quarterback is. Like Lamar Jackson off a 6-week knee injury, no thanks.
Yeah, especially at the quarterback position. But yeah, if he plays and they somehow get through Cincy, then they got to get through
Kansas City.
Probably. Yeah, it's not. I don't think, and it's not like this offense is like explosive where they're going to get 2 games. Like, I don't mind the idea of a full fade. I guess if I got to take someone, it would be Mark Andrews.
I don't think the offense is going to explode, but the defense is really good, and they held Joe Burrow to 5.6 yards per pass attempt in their 2 meetings this season. Burrow was bad in both of those games,
which is interesting because I don't think the Ravens' pass defense is very good. Right?
They're better against the run.
Yeah, they're 19th against receivers, 17th against quarterbacks.
They kind of took the game off, too, this last one.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I like the point that resonates here is if you're playing Andrews, you're betting on them to win. So
I wouldn't full fade the Bengals in that scenario. I'd still play maybe a Mixon. Yeah, I'd still play a Bengal.
I'd play a receiver I'd play T. Higgins there because the losing Bengals aren't running a bunch against the Ravens.
Okay.
Even the winning Bengals won't run a bunch. They'll still throw.
We'll see. I've been saying all year, every Ravens-Steelers game in history has been 16
You
to
were right.
13,
You were
16
right.
to 15. And, just as a joke, and the two games this year were 16-14, 16-13. Bengals-Ravens has that same kind of vibe for me going into this game this week. I'd be a little unsettled as Cincinnati with how Baltimore just, you know what, you take home field, we'll sit our guys and prep for next week. And the Bengals still had enough of a stake with Buffalo in consideration.
Yeah.
Bills were losing in the second half of their game. I don't know. I'm just feeling Baltimore a little bit, but as Adam knows, I kind of always am.
The matchup and the low passing numbers for Joe Burrow at least make me not very interested in Joe Burrow for FFPC challenge lineups.
All right. Challenging game. We got the Ravens as a 6.5 point underdog now. So on a Tuesday, the only thing you could do that's actionable with this theory is bet the Ravens and then see the number come down, maybe only a couple of points, but it probably does.
6.5 assumes Lamar Jackson's playing, right?
You think?
I think so. Maybe
that might be right.
maybe a
That
little
might be
hedge. It might go down to 5.5 if he's confirmed in. But
Well, that might be right. If you knew it was Huntley,
I think it'd be over 7.
it'd be larger. I agree. Let's talk about the Dolphins next and maybe start with the same point. That line is 10.5. What is that line, assuming the Dolphins are doing at quarterback?
It's going to be somebody crappy.
Yeah, I assume it's somebody crappy.
Which is anybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anybody
I'm
have.
assuming that's not Tua playing it if it's 10.5. I mean, with Tua, they beat the Bills and they were beating them in the second half in a snowstorm in
8-point
Buffalo.
lead fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, so they can certainly win this game with Tua. Tua would help in a shootout scenario too. Like that would be nice to get Tua, get a shootout. So even the losing team gets somebody through there. I'm going to just say something real quick, and then I'll let Jared take over. This is his Dolphins. We've talked about this. I love with most. I think Mostert's out. Yes, I love
Probably.
Jeff Wilson.
Say, yeah.
I love Jeff Wilson in this matchup, especially if you think the Dolphins are going to lose. A running back off a losing team, fine. Raheem Mostert ran all over the Bills the last game, and they should have, even losing, they should have kept running the ball with Raheem Mostert. They were running for like 8 yards a carry.
Yep.
I love Jeff Wilson in this matchup. He's going to be super low owned.
Wilson was 7 yards a carry, too.
Yeah.
But fewer touches in that same game. All right, why are they your Dolphins?
I used to be a Dolphins fan, kind of.
Okay.
Don't
But
do that.
17-point implied total for Miami. I mean, I think this is the easiest call here is to fade Miami, right?
Sure.
I think there's a case to be made for Wilson, and then I think there's a case to be made for Tyreek Hill because he could go for 25 in a one and done scenario, and you're still happy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you really have to make the case for Tyreek Hill, and that's why I like Jeff Wilson so much here. There's going to be plenty of Tyreek Hill. There's going to be some Jalen Waddle for the same reason because he can have a big game anytime. Jeff Wilson has had 31 carries and 9 targets over the past 2 weeks with Raheem Mostert involved. He's probably going to miss this game. He's got a broken thumb. I don't know why you would put a running back out there with a broken thumb. So I'm assuming that Jeff Wilson Jr. is the lead back here. He's had 3 games of 18-plus opportunities with Raheem Mostert in the fold. Adam already mentioned last game where Raheem Mostert dominated Buffalo on the ground, and Salvin Ahmed did as well and scored a touchdown. The first meeting where Miami had the ball for about 12 total plays, 2 of those were Chase Edmonds rushing touchdowns. So we've seen the Bills can be vulnerable against running backs. I am fine with full fading the Dolphins, but I also think that Jeff Wilson has Kendrick Bourne potential here.
KBP.
Let's go.
Kendrick Bourne potential. I love it.
Let's leave.
I love it. We're only half done. Beautiful. All right. So there's the AFC.
Yep.
NFC. Philadelphia clinched the 1 seed, battling its way to a close win against Giants backups in Week 18. They had lost to New Orleans without Jalen Hurts the previous week. Does Philadelphia have the same shine on it as it's had?
They have less shine, but they have just as much potential. And I mean, if you look at the NFC draw, there's one other good team. That's the other thing in their favor.
1.5.
I'll be curious to hear who the half is. So Jalen Hurts, the only reason that he's not the top quarterback here, or the only reason that he's clearly number 2 for me, is that he can't play 4 games. He can only play 3, and Josh Allen can play 4. Otherwise, I think Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are basically exactly the same. And really, Jalen Hurts has... So there's more potential for you to soak up Josh Allen points with Stefon Diggs than there is with Jalen Hurts and any of his pass catchers.
Yeah, I think as Adam alluded to, the issue with Hurts is the schedule a little bit for me. First game's going to be against Dallas or the Giants. Dallas second in adjusted points allowed to quarterbacks, the Giants 16th. The second game for the Eagles would likely be against the Niners, who I think are the best defense in the NFL. They finished the season 10th in adjusted points allowed to quarterbacks.
Jarrett Stidham doesn't think
Hurts
they're the
will be
best
fine.
defense.
Yeah, Hurts will be fine, but I think if you're weighing Hurts versus Josh Allen or even Patrick Mahomes, the edge and schedule goes to the AFC guys.
Yeah, I think the other thing working in Josh Allen's favor, and maybe Patrick Mahomes' favor as well, is there are more options among the Eagles than I think there are among the Bills, and than there are among Chiefs at this point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I love the Eagles. I thought for the whole season, like, okay, this is going to be the team. I'm going to have these guys in these playoff challenges, and then I started falling in love with the Niners, and just like they're another team that's loaded with players that you can choose, and they have an insane defense, and I just feel like they're right there too. Luckily, they're seeds 1 and 2, so you don't have to worry about them playing each other until the NFC Championship game. So I think it's just if I lean Allen over Hurts. I probably lean Mahomes over Hurts too because of the NFC schedule against quarterbacks. To me, do you want A.J. Brown? Do you want Devonta Smith? And I think A.J. Brown will be more owned, but I think Devonta Smith's been it's like a Higgins Chase thing, except I think Devonta Smith's been maybe just as good or better than A.J. Brown. So if I'm taking a guy from the Eagles, I think it's going to be Devonta Smith.
Second half of the season, A.J. Brown, 18.6 fantasy points. Devonta Smith, 18.1.
Yeah, right. And going to be, I think, much lower owned, I think.
I like that, too. I'm asking myself if I'm trying too hard with Hurts.
Yeah.
You could go to a different quarterback and be kind of just the same. Playoff rushing yard props to lead the playoffs in rushing yards, including the Super Bowl. Christian McCaffrey, who we'll get to, is the favorite. Josh Allen and Miles Sanders are tied for second. So strong expectation that they'll play 3 games. Believe it or not, yeah, plus 750.
Does Miles Sanders know that? Because he told us not to play him in fantasy football.
That's just because they're saying the Eagles will make it out of the NFC.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is the 6th choice, by the way, himself, plus 1,200. Yeah, that's not the game we're playing, but is Sanders viable if you think do they have to lose? And they're not playing the first week. Sanders is kind of tough to roster here.
Yeah, I think you'd be assuming no more than 2 games from the Eagles. I would have been more interested in Sanders 3 weeks ago, but the last 2 weeks, it's almost been a
Boston
third between Sanders, Gainwell, and Scott. If you look at snaps, so I'm off Miles Sanders.
And he's playing through a knee injury. He's been playing through it, but that adds some risk. So yeah, Miles Sanders is going to draw some ownership, which I like because it'll pull it away from the others. I think that the best thing here is ownership is going to get spread around. Dallas Goedert's going to draw plenty because of the tight end premium, and I think he's a fine option there as well. Like there's obviously Travis Kelce way above everybody else, but behind him, Mark Andrews, T.J. Hawkinson, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, even Evan Ingram. There's not a whole lot separating those guys.
And the other thing too is, if you figure the Eagles get to at least to the NFC Championship game, it's not like the AFC scenario where it's going to be a shootout probably with whichever teams make it. Here you're going to run into San Francisco, number 1 against running backs, number 10 against quarterbacks, number 5 against tight ends. 27th against receivers. So I think you got to go Philly receivers. You're definitely not going to start the kicker. The Niners are number 1 against kickers. So I don't think we want to do that.
How?
That's right. Everyone's missing.
What are they doing? Somebody has to be.
Yeah, that's right.
No one's scoring points against them.
There it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Dallas 24th in adjusted points allowed to wide receiver. So it's a nice wide receiver schedule. So I'm definitely leaning Brown or Smith from the Eagles.
Yeah.
Okay. San Francisco, the 2 seed in the NFC. George Kittle with Brock Purdy we're finally getting the touchdowns we've always wanted to see. What's been missing in terms of George Kittle. We've got Christian McCaffrey there too. We just mentioned the favorite to lead the playoffs in rushing, and we all know about his prowess. Other options too. I know Adam's waiting to talk about the quarterback over there.
Let me make the anti-Christian McCaffrey case because I think that he's probably going to be the highest owned running back, which is the first thing against him. Mm-hmm. You mentioned how he's the favorite to lead in rushing yards, but he's played 4 games with Elijah Mitchell so far, and in those 4 games, he has averaged 10.5 carries and 5.5 targets per game. That's 16 opportunities per game, which is fine, but it's not a guy you can't miss. And just to put that in further context, Miles Sanders this season has averaged 16.8 opportunities per game. Now, obviously, the targets are more valuable for McCaffrey than the carries for Miles Sanders, but that's a lot of risk for a guy that's going to be on a lot of teams and is in an offense where plenty of other people can score. So I'm not saying a full fade on Christian McCaffrey, but I'm going to go lower on Christian McCaffrey than I think most other people will.
Just wonder, how good is Purdy? maybe the Seattle Seahawks are not the team to measure this by, right? They've kind of won easily a couple times against Seattle. So if he's good, then they'll get into a tough game and they'll turn to him. And of course, Christian McCaffrey can mean things a lot in the passing game too. But I feel like the Kittle thing is just speaking to me loud.
The only time we've seen Purdy playing from behind was the Raiders game, and that's one of the worst defenses. So we haven't seen him playing catch up against a good defense yet. So I still have questions about Purdy. Maybe it doesn't matter how good he is though. Maybe just the scheme is so good and the weapons are so good that like if he just doesn't combust, they're going to be fine.
And he did get there in the Raider game.
He did.
Yeah, and this is kind of the opposite. Is he's going to get Seattle in the first round, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean Seattle. Easy against quarterbacks, easy against running backs, easy against the best tight end matchup, but number 2 against receivers. Seattle is. So it's like, do we get away from those Niners receivers? We don't really know, right? Is it Ayuk? Is it Debo back? Christian McCaffrey. Seattle's 28th against running backs. Philly's 16th against running backs. Kind of projecting forward. McCaffrey would be hard for me to get off of, even though I can see other things. If I do want to get crazy, and I will, in some of these $35 ones, I love the idea of going Brock Purdy, thinking he can get 4 games, get into the Super Bowl, get those double points. I mean, he doesn't even have to do a ton, one or 2 touchdowns. Yeah. I think he's been fine. He's been good enough where if he can get a couple of games, get to the Super Bowl, he's going to be low owned.
Yeah,
too.
but if you get the Niners in the Super Bowl, you're also doubling McCaffrey's points,
Right.
George Kittle's points,
Sure.
Deebo Samuel's
No, I
points.
get
Yeah. To me, and you can do it in a 30.
Yeah, that's right.
It's your money.
We're not sharing that team, huh?
No, not on my team. I think you're giving up a lot of upside at quarterback.
Yeah.
With Purdy versus these elites.
No, I get it.
And then, like Matt said, you're also the opportunity cost is you can't play Kittle or McCaffrey, who I think are 2 of the 8 strongest plays at the flex positions.
Yeah, but you can get in Kelce, you can get in Diggs, you can get in some of those other studs. So
If San Francisco wins, they'll get the Vikings if they win. Otherwise, the Dallas-Tampa winner, that doesn't seem especially problematic, really, for their first potentially 2 games. And they'd have home field for both of those games, too. Yep. All right, interesting options there. Maybe the most challenging teams, just with all the different options.
I like George Kittle best. I like Deebo Samuel as one of those differentiating picks because of the issue that I mentioned with Christian McCaffrey, plus the ownership. Plus, there's a lot of unknown here. Brock Purdy's only been playing for 6-7 games so far in his rookie season. We have 0 full games of Deebo, Brock Purdy, and Elijah Mitchell in the same lineup. So we don't know how much Deebo's going to run the ball. We don't know if any of this changes when they get into the playoffs as opposed to playing the regular season where every game is more important to win. So there's a whole lot of unknown. That even makes me lean a bit further toward not taking the most popular. And I think George Kittle will be the 2nd most popular 49er. Deebo maybe 3rd, and might even have to split some of that with Ayuk just because he finished the season not playing a whole lot.
On to Minnesota, the 3 seed, home to the Giants. Jefferson. So is he the guy in this tournament who will just be on everybody's team? I mean, they're the 3 seed, good chance at 2 games as their favorite, not a big favorite against the Giants. Hawkinson, Cook, there are other ideas here, but Jefferson is such a standout.
I think people are going to look at him like he's Cooper Kupp from last year. And so my point is that he's not. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is a stud, and he should be the first Viking in consideration. But since TJ Hawkinson arrived in week 9 through week 17, I'm throwing out the last game because they both only played half of it. In that span, 9.4 targets per game, 6.6 catches per game for TJ Hawkinson, 12 targets per game, 8 catches per game for Justin Jefferson. So those 6.6 catches per game for Hawkinson are worth more points than Jefferson's 8 catches per game. 9.9 points per game by the tight end premium scoring just on those catches. I'm not saying TJ Hawkinson is better than Justin Jefferson, but in a tournament where we have to make decisions like that, fade somebody that's not necessarily a bad play, but just because of how popular he is, there's definitely a case there, especially for a team. I would not be at all shocked if they lose to the Giants, and I certainly don't expect them to go beyond 2 games.
Now, if you're fading Jefferson, you're playing the Vikings to be one and done, right? So you definitely want a giant position player in that case. I definitely think it's a viable play.
Yeah, and for a giant possession player, Saquon Barkley's another guy. When we're not there yet, but yeah, I think is this finally where Minnesota crumbles? Right, they've been the point. I think Jared, you pointed to the point differential. Like it's terrible. Like people have been saying the Minnesota's just they're not that good. Team. They're a bad team. They're not that good. So
-3 for the year.
Yeah, minus
13 and 4.
They kind of remind me of the Titans last year as the 1 seed. Granted they're not the 1 seed, but it's just like how are they this high? What are they doing here? Type deal. So I think kind of a sharp play would be to fade the Vikings and to fade them with TJ Hockenson, because Hockenson does have that massive upside potential. He's done it. He did it in Detroit. He did it in Minnesota.
He did it against the Giants when they played like a month ago.
Was that against the Giants?
That was his massive game. The Giants have been bad against tight ends all season.
The Giants are bad against tight ends. Yeah. So I think that could be a clever play there too. So, and I think fading the Vikings might be a key here.
There is no way I'm not fading the Vikings. I have to listen to how one-score wins are a skill every day, and they were 11-0 in one-score games.
Absurd.
They're going 0-1.
Yeah.
Unless the Giants run away with it. They're going 0-1 in this week. Greg Joseph is my play. He had a 61-yard field goal to beat the Giants. He was good against the Giants.
There you go.
I kind of really want to do that. Okay. Tampa is the 4 seed. Is there life there?
No.
Next.
I can't. No. Let's talk about it.
The only argument for the Cowboys is that they get to play the Bucs in the first round, but this is a matchup of crap against crap at this point. The Cowboys have sucked over the past
they have
4 weeks.
They have, but for a lot of the season, I thought they were right there with Philly and the Niners. So, so what Cowboys team are you going to get?
Yeah,
maybe you get the one that beat Minnesota 40-3.
Exactly.
How good is Minnesota? There's a good example.
The Cowboys were my half good team in the NFC, by the way.
Yeah, I disagree.
I think their ceiling is good enough to go to the Super Bowl.
I don't. They were a much better team this time last year, and then they lost at home to the 49ers. This is not a good team.
6 in DVOA.
I thought, are we talking about Tampa or talking about the Cowboys?
Well, sorry. I guess you have to do it together.
Yeah, that's right. I'm fine with doing it together. I just think I never want to bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs, no matter how bad he's been, no matter what. Like it's a home playoff game in what could be an absolute shootout. I'm not saying I'm taking Tom Brady, but you've got Dallas who's 24th against wide receivers, and they're really good against everybody else but the kicker. So I could certainly see taking a Godwin or an Evans here. And I'm not going to fade the Cowboys because they've got guys who can score too. And again, I think it is a little bit more of a coin flip, but I like Tampa Bay here, and I like this to be a shootout. So I think we'll go with Tampa.
Yeah, Dallas 24th against wide receivers, and then if they got the Niners in round 2, they're 27th against wide receivers. So it could be a string of 2 really good matchups for Evans or Godwin.
Yep.
Matt?
I like Chris Godwin a lot. I think Mike Evans is worth considering, and I'm not looking at anybody else.
Agreed.
Okay.
The backfield is too split to take either one.
Too split, and either guy's been good or productive all year.
And the team's not winning by leaning runs, so there's just no draw to it.
All right, on the Cowboys, I really like CeeDee Lamb for this tournament.
Me too.
I don't think they're a bad team at all. They're favored in Tampa. I'm not sure how I want to read that line. I mean, they probably should be with the record difference, but you do have the Brady point. It's Brady against Mike McCarthy.
My read is the books want you to bet the Bucs getting the full 3.
Okay, which means Dallas, if you're right. And I think Lamb is the clear and obvious there. I don't know. I haven't really known the rankings like you guys in terms of defense, but Dallas could play different teams in round 2. If I'm right about the Giants, they would play San Francisco. And San Francisco wins, they'd play San Francisco in round 2. I just like Lamb a lot, but there are other guys here.
So sucks is my description for Dallas just for radio purposes. I don't actually believe that they suck. They're just not that good. Mm-hmm. They're down, like overall for the season, sure, their ratings were very good DVOA wise, but if you keep filtering it down over more recent performances, the closer you get to the end of the season, the worse it is. 14th in overall DVOA over the final 4 weeks, and that's excluding week 18. 13th on offense, 16th on defense. So I just think they're an average team by regular season standards, and that makes you a worse team versus playoff team. So I don't think Dallas is going anywhere. So I lean toward trying to get a little bit of leverage on the field by playing a less popular player here. I like Tony Pollard, and we'll see exactly how it all fits together when I'm maybe only going with 2 running backs. Maybe he doesn't fit, but he's 5th among running backs in this playoff field in fantasy points per game, just 1 point per game behind CeeDee Lamb. So he's been scoring almost as much as CeeDee Lamb for the season. There's lots of wide receiver options here as well. I think Tony Pollard's going to be a lot lower owned. I think he's probably going to be the third Cowboy in ownership rating behind Lamb and Dalton Schultz, who I think is the guy that's kind of fool's gold here.
Yeah, Schultz, even if you want to get crazy with Schultz, he doesn't have great matchups. It's not like you can sneak in one of those great matchups. Yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb to me is just click it. Yeah. Pollard, I love Pollard. Again, they're splitting. Where's he been the last couple weeks?
Hurt.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't really want to come play a guy coming off an injury. But I do love Pollard.
Heading into the last game. So
I think he would have played
about his health.
I think he would have played against Tennessee if they needed him.
Right.
Yeah, Pollard would be my second choice.
Yeah.
For sure, and I could certainly see blow up games there. But I just think the matchup's too good here for CeeDee Lamb.
We're to the 5 seed, and we haven't mentioned one other NFC quarterback except to indulge Adam on Brock Purdy. Is there anybody even Prescott?
Nope.
No. Why?
It's not going anywhere.
And if they do, I'd rather have Lamb. I think he soaks up a lot of what Prescott does.
Dallas can't win 2 games.
No.
Who's their second game? Philly
or San Fran?
I think they could beat San Fran.
Not a chance.
See, I think they have a better chance against Philly. San Francisco's defense is just...
It's Brock. I mean,
it's there.
Yeah,
they're going to be dramatically outcoached in that game is probably the biggest issue. There's plenty of talent to win, but this team sucks at coaching. I mean, that's not just radio words. Mike McCarthy is bad at coaching.
It's unfortunate that's his job, isn't it?
Exactly.
4? What's the line? Dallas to San Francisco? 4?
I bet it's 5.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
More than 3, less than 7, less than 6.
Okay. The Giants. So, if you are going to do what I'm going to do and fade Minnesota, is Saquon Barkley the only play?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're expecting 2 Giants games, I don't think you can go anywhere else.
I mean, I think you can. I do think Barkley is the top play, but I think you can get away with Richie James. Like we've seen the Giants be okay with Saquon Barkley not producing. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a good play, but just in getting different. Like we just recently saw Daniel Jones had the blow up game with Saquon Barkley barely involved, and my best ball teams will attest to them blowing out that game without Barkley scoring.
Yeah, in one Giants game, I think a receiver outscoring Barkley is viable. I think it's much less likely in 2 games for that to happen.
The next week it's someone else.
But we're just talking about 2 games. I mean, that's
possible, but less likely.
As small a sample.
I just don't think there's any way that Barkley going into a contract year in a playoff game isn't going to touch the ball 35 times.
I'll take the under.
He touched it 30 plus times, multiple times earlier in the year. I'm just saying they are going to ride Barkley, win or lose, to this. Barkley's the only guy. And Minnesota's 21 against.
I think this team got less dependent on him. And again, I'm not saying Barkley bad play. I'm just saying in terms of thinking about somebody who could be 5% owned or less and also has the path to production in a small sample. This is a team that over the second half of the season got to more of a point where it can play without riding Saquon Barkley too hard.
I can build a team with Kelce, Diggs, Chase, Lamb, A.J. Brown.
There you go.
Kittle.
Devonta Smith.
As long as I go Daniel Jones.
No. That's right. Well, here's the thing.
20 points a week.
Yeah.
Is that enough?
He's had a good season.
Double in the Super Bowl.
He had a big game against Minnesota.
Oh, stop. Double in the Super Bowl.
The last time I was sitting here, I was telling everybody over and over the Giants had not had a winning record since Obama. What happened to me?
Save it for your $35 teams, Mike.
That's right.
They're not going better than 500 in these playoffs.
I think with this game, Jefferson with a Giants receiver is viable, or Hawkinson or fading the Vikings with Barkley is viable. I think you go one of those.
I like that. Yeah, like you said, I don't think you can fade the Vikings, go to the Giants, and do Daniel Jones. I just don't think you can do it. And if you're like, I want to do a Richie James, it might be Hodgins, it might be James. Like we don't even know who it's going to be. So.
I think Hawkinson and fading the Giants is viable as well.
Or that. I'm okay with that.
Not on my teams.
I know Barkley's got a
Barkley. You bring up Barkley in the
Barkley's
contract
matchup too.
You bring up the contract year and everything. Like, okay, here's a taste of the playoffs, right? Like, I think that sort of applies to Tua also this week. Just this is my one chance I've had to go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Is Jones going to be back there? Did he do enough? Does it come down to this week?
They said they want him.
Yeah, there's a report that they want to re-sign Jones and Barkley.
Imagine if they said they didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, for what money, we'll
Again,
do the thing.
Jones has had a really good year.
Yes.
Yeah. With no weapons.
No weapons.
Yeah, he's had a great year.
Where did he rank? I'll stop after this. I'll stop after
like
this.
Draft Sharks is very high
Ninth.
on Daniel Jones.
Quarterback
by the
9.
way.
I like quarterbacks that can run.
I'm done. Seattle. Anybody for anything here?
Well, again, the Niners are 27th against wide receivers, so you could play Metcalf or Lockett. I mean, they're going to lose, right? We think they have no shot, but again, one of those receivers could go 100 in a score.
I mean, I would be less surprised if Seattle beat San Francisco than I would if Miami beat Buffalo this week. I mean, totally fine with full fading Seattle. Yep. If I play anybody, it's DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. I think they're also in play for. I guess we shouldn't play the kicker because we heard about that matchup earlier.
That's right.
Maybe the defense. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm probably leaning toward fading Seattle because you got to fade 2 teams and 4 teams if you count defense and kicker as fading.
Which you should.
Right.
Don't you think?
Yes.
These are teams you want to have lose.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're betting on Seattle here, you got to take a receiver. And at least if you take one and they lose, you have a chance for a really
Kendrick
good,
Bourne potential.
Yeah, that's right. You have a Kendrick Bourne potential.
Okay, so as we've gone team by team here, I've built a roster based on the consensus, or for the most part, the consensus. It doesn't have Daniel Jones on it, so I'm not just building my team, not just stealing your information or anything like that. But I don't know. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, it's the winning team.
Mahomes,
Okay.
I'm out.
Ekeler, and ETN head to head.
Okay.
Diggs, Chase, Devontae Smith, Lamb, Barkley,
More than 2 running backs. Okay.
Jeff Wilson,
I like it.
Kittle. So only one tight end. I already hate that. Like, I
And
have
4 running backs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did we do? I already I went team by team and not so much like
Just flop
what do I want?
Mahomes,
And Kelce?
Diggs for Kelsey Allen, and you're looking a lot
Still
better.
got a 4 running back issue.
I'll consider it.
But don't touch Jeff Wilson. You leave
consider
Jeff Wilson right where he is.
Greg Joseph, Ravens. I think Ravens.
So
if you're fading the Ravens are the defense among the Seahawks, the Dolphins, I don't know,
So the full fades there are Tampa.
and Seattle. Is it? It's not a problem that they're on the same side, right?
I
No.
don't think so.
I mean, we have to fade basically 6 teams. 2 out, 2 a kicker in defense, 2 one-position players. So,
And also, it would be interesting to plug that into to Fantasy Mojo's little thing there of what has kind of won recently. Two running backs, 2 players less than 10% owned, and just kind of go through the rules there and see if it.
Yeah, do we have the 2 contrarian plays there? Jeff Wilson's one.
Well, it definitely loses already because it's got 4 running backs and not 2. So
See, again, that's where that information's useful, but I don't think it means a 4 running back team can't win.
I mean, anything can win, but it's more difficult for 4 running backs to get there, for any number of running backs to get there repeatedly with the PPR and tight end premium mixed in.
And I agree that just looking at the pool this year, it doesn't look like a year to go 4 running backs. But.
I would only play Wilson, and I mean, if I ever would, it would only be if Tua is on the field. I think they have a real chance if
I agree.
If Tua plays. And because they don't have anything.
the Bills guys over here.
For me, if
So scared.
Although I did this last year with the Patriots, I'm like, about Belichick's known for cheating and all this other stuff, and they lose like by 700 points.
I think Josh Jacobs was on the perfect lineup last year with one game against the Bengals.
Right.
He was. Yep. The perfect lineup last year was 6 receivers, and two running backs.
All right. Anything else you guys want to mention? Strategy, team by team. We did that.
No, we have a strategy article up on Draft Sharks right now, and then by Wednesday we'll have all this data up there for everyone to pour through.
Oh yeah, Jared and I will be potting later this week too. I'm sure we'll be talking more of this stuff, even if it's less specifically playoff challenge.
Yep.
Can't wait. It's all I want this week.
I know.
Is this.
Just build lineups.
Thanks, everybody. Adam Krautwurst, Matt Schauf, and Jared Smola. Thanks to Scott here at RockVox. I'm Mike Shope. DraftSharks.com for more. Thanks for watching and listening. Goodbye.
Can't wait to build my Hawkins and Jefferson.